Hey, hi there, folks. Welcome to the channel, the Optimistic Absurdist channel. I am your host, Warren. Welcome if you are joining us for the first time. Our channel gently and quietly questions the absurdity that is our human condition and our universe. And regarding our universe, we don't question the universe seeking answers because that would be absurd. But we question it knowing we have to metaphorically do our uh, modern day Sisyphuses and step off into the absurdity anyway. And so we question gently and quietly. And quietly is significant because if you were joining us for a hype channel, that's not it. This isn't it. We have some fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we question the human condition. Why is it that we oftentimes knowingly do the things we do um, regarding almost anything you can think of? And yeah, that's what we do here. Who am I? Um, Retired Army after 20 years, and that's going to be significant in some respects to our discussion. And Yeah, and then after that, did a stint as uh, why am I getting that? I don't want to get that. Okay, there we go. I was getting a weird feedback. Did a stint as an instructor at the University of Hawaii, ROTC. And when that ended, moved on to a DoD contract, which I'm technically still on, but I freelance as a training analyst for them. Do a little writing, as you could see or saw in the description. What else you need to know? Hold a graduate degree in the social sciences, which makes me think that I want to be social scientists. And but I lean more to philosophy, really. What else? I support my wife's career along with everything else I just said, and take care of our furry, uh, spoiled beyond recognition golden retriever Arya. Um, yeah, that's me. Um, don't know what this is. Move that. These things are throwing me off. Um, so, hmm, yeah. How are you guys doing out there? What is it like here in Hawaii? What's been going on? Weather-wise, let me see if I can show you what we have going on for weather, but it's nice. The trades, as we say, are back. Why am I having such a hard time with sharing? Anyway, the trades are back, so it's nice and cool and windy. You probably can hear my chimes in the background, but I wanted to show you the weather, man. What is going on? Let's see here. If I did that, but bear with me real fast. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. Here we go. I'm gonna get it. I know I am gonna get it. Let's see. Nope. That's not gonna do it. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Anyway, the trades are back, and it's nice. What I was gonna show you was uh, kind of the mountain ranges and how that works here in terms of the trades, who gets what. But there are two mountain ranges here in Hawaii. One is the Waianae Range, which runs kind of in the middle of the island and out to, which is why I wanted to show you so you had context, and out to the west coast, the Waianae coast. And then there are the Kualaus that run from a small town up in the northeast called the Kahukus down to the Makapuhu lighthouse. And then it cuts back into the middle of the island and cuts the island in two. So everyone in the northeast down to the southeast coast gets the trades, which are just blowing across the island. And so everyone from the west, because the Waianae range and some of the Kualaus cut uh, that off. The west side is the dry side. Obviously, it doesn't get that much. And then the north, where you probably see all the surfing occurring in our winter, which is the rainy, windy season up on the North Shore, they get just theirs because, again, of how the range sits. And so everybody gets wind of some kind eventually, and everyone gets enough to have surf seasonally for surfing. But I wanted to show you that. I think it's 70. Well, I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you. And then we'll get into our conversation. It is 77 degrees and windy. And that's for the rest of the day. And all the way through Sunday of this week. And then we get some rain on Monday and some mixed clouds and sun. Anyway, that's what's happening here in paradise. Not going to keep you to keep you. So let's get into our discussion. But I want to do it in the form of questions. Raise your hand if this week you immediately made an assumption, and I'm not judging you. I just, it's setting the stage for our discussion, but just based on what your eye saw, you immediately drew a conclusion, be it that you were right or wrong. Raise your hand. Immediately drew one. Yes, of course. And then the second question to that I want to ask is, now here's the tough part. Honest broker now. Was your first conclusion a negative one? Raise your hand. More than likely. I ask those because there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us. We can blame our ancestors because they didn't have the luxury of alert and alarm systems and the internet and towers and other people, neighbors to quickly tell us they see something. They didn't have the luxury of that. And so they were always on the defensive, always on the defensive. Everything is negative. Where did we see that wild beast yesterday that almost got us? We need to figure out how not to go back there, or when we do, how to trap it before it traps us, right? They didn't have the luxury. And so they were always wired for threat. And so it's passed on. So our limbic system, which I often say is located towards the back of our skull, is always front and center in everything we do, And of course, it's always first danger, threat. And then our prefrontal cortex, like the old sergeant would say, take a knee, face out, pull security, and drink some water till we figure it out, because your eyes are probably betraying you. And that's a hint to our first story. But seriously, how often are our first conclusions sometimes the wrong ones after more analysis? And sometimes I'm not even sure if some people get a chance to second guess. And look, there are times in our lives when we need our limbic system to be fired up to keep us safe. There are times when there are no times to go, oh, what is that really? Let me do the sergeant and take a knee and face out. There are times. But in today's day and age, unlike our ancestors, we have a lot more time. But how often? How often have we judged Karen at the water cooler? Simply because of what our eyes first showed us. And again, it's our human nature, which is what we do on this channel. We question our human nature. And the first story I'm going to share with you is it's a little comical. It's a little comical, but still serious. And this one is the one based on my military experience. The other two aren't. So anyway, the Scarecrow. So I think this was 2003 in Iraq. So it was still pretty hot. And we had an outlying unit, which was pretty small because of some specialty stuff that they did. And so they're, for conversation's sake, their base, it wasn't quite one. Their base was pretty out there. And so they got in a pickle, and they had been in this pickle, a fight all day. and needed an emergency resupply. So we were spun up, and I think we had three cargo trucks with the supplies, and then four gun trucks. And now these gun trucks are smaller trucks, the Humvees that you've probably seen. And on these Humvees, we had anywhere a mix of M2 machine guns, Mark 19s, and M249s. So things you didn't want to be on the receiving end of. And so we put that together. So I think three, 7 trucks, and we pushed out. So we got to what we call their outer cordon because again they're still in the fight, and they had us hold at their outer cordon. And by the way, this is nighttime, almost just it's dark, and I'm laughing because I told you it was kind of funny, um, and it's dark, and so they told us to hold at their outer cordon and be on the lookout too because two things could possibly happen, right? That the cordon could be breached by the bad guys within the cordon that they're trying to get after and try to breach it and escape, right? So we had lookout. And the second thing is that there could be reinforcements coming for them from the outside of the cordon. Here's the setup. All around us were nothing but farms, primarily corn fields. And we're staggered on the road, and it's your typical kind of like you would see in farm country here in the states. Not so much here in Hawaii, but mainland America. And so we're staggered on this dirt road, and we're in full blackout. We're using our NVGs, and I get the call on the radio. Charger 32. This is whomever, I forgot his call sign. I know his name, but we won't use his name. He's a good kid, though, really good kid. But I don't remember a lot of things, but I remember his name. Anyway, so I get the call, and it's like Charger 32. I see movement. Okay, status report. And he keeps briefing me on what he could see, right? A salute report, size, activity, location, unit, if he could tell, time and equipment, right? That's salute. Anyway, he gives me what he thinks he sees. And I'm asking the other gun trucks, and they don't see anything. So I drop down on the unit's internal comms, and I call them and I said, hey, do you have eyes on above to tell me if you see movement along your cordon? And they did have eyes on. And they're like, no, we don't see anything. And my gunner just keeps calling. And by now you figured out the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. It was nothing more by this time. By the time we went through it all, and I told him settle down, and he got a good 10 minutes of relaxing his limbic system. It was by then daybreak to where we could see, and sure enough, it was just, I think it was like on his side that he could see that he had his flank. I think it was 4 or 6 scarecrows just waving in the night breeze. And because they went back and forth and side to side, the movements kept throwing him off. And again, all he has is what his eyes see. And oh, by the way, it's limited by NVGs. I mean, they're awesome, but they limit depth and a lot of other things without saying too much about them. But there were nothing more than scarecrows. And I wanted to share that one because although funny, shots could have been fired and given away positions, and other people who had overwatch that were at covered locations, all of that good jazz. So shots could have been fired if we believed at first what our eyes saw in this situation. And this was combat where, once the rounds leave the weapons, as I explained to you, the type of weapons that we had that night too, there were no bringing them back, right? So I share that because as you're going to see in the other two also, it's I don't want to sound preachy and I don't want to make it sound simplistic as if, oh, whatever, I don't have time to figure that out. What I see is what I see. And because it's my eyes, I'm going to trust my eyes. Because I got that from soldiers because we had to temper some immaturities. I mean, these kids are signing up at 18, 19, right? So we had to temper some immaturities. So I've heard it, and I understand it. Like I said, we got it from our ancestors, so they didn't have the luxury, right? But we do. We do. And I did an episode about 4 to 6 seconds where an old sergeant major told me that after the oh shit factor, right? As in getting hit by an IED or an ambush, after the oh shit factor, you have 4 to 6 seconds to make a decision, and usually it's enough time to make a good one. So don't want to go down the rabbit hole and again sound preachy. I just things for us to throw around because of the human condition, right? And I told you I wouldn't keep you just to keep you either. But that one, I laughed a lot through it, I know, but I still do today because it cracked me up. All right. Let's talk about the tent. Again, our eyes, what we first see, right? And the second question I asked was it's often negative, right? So I'm visiting family in, let's leave the state nameless, but I'm visiting a warm state similar to the one I live in now, with family. And we're driving around in the car and we get to an intersection, and let me set it up for you. So we're at the light and I think it was to my right. So we're sitting at the light and off to the right inside the bushes in an enclosed area, there were a couple tents, homeless tents, or let's go with disenfranchised people living in these tents. Nothing else. So them off to the right, traffic over to the left in front, and oh, by the way, to the right too, because they're in the enclosure. And there was someone changing, and they were not visible to us, but you could tell that they were changing just from the movement, and you could see clothes being hung over a line afterwards. But they were not nude, and they were not showing themselves to the general public. And someone in my vehicle, in the vehicle I was traveling in, said, I bet you that they're getting ready to go beg. And me being the wannabe social scientist and philosopher came back with, how do you know they're not getting ready to go to work? And here's why that one is significant too, because here where I live, because of the cost of living, there is a lot of that. And I'm sure every state can speak to it. But, and I'm not trying to not get you to visit here, okay? But there's more of it here than should be. So I understand. Here's the point. Most of the people here that are in these tents aren't bums or jobless. They're homeless because of the cost of living for housing here. Don't know what the situation was in that state, but how did they know that they weren't just houseless? Let's call it that. And we're getting ready to go to work because again, it wasn't trash, strewn about, and exposing themselves to the public. They were just changing clothes, and that is all that all of us had to go with. Tents off to the right, in the bushes, someone changing clothes. And the first response was, I bet you they're getting ready to go beg. Not work, not volunteering, uh, beg. Again, because when we see that in our society, that's the first thing we associate that with is gotta be bums and drug addicts and the worst of our society. And that's why they're in tents living in green enclosures in the urban areas. But it's not our fault. It's not our fault. Or is it? I mean, if now that you know what I said, that, um, and if after I broke it down to you about what happens here in this state and gave you more context, if I replayed that and set that scene here in this state, and you know what you know now, would you, if you were that person, make that same statement? Because you see some really nice cars, which is another discussion for. I don't know why I'm in a chuckling mood, but that's another discussion for another day. But you see some really nice cars by these tents, by the way. Again, speaking for where I live only. But that was the first thing that the occupant, the family member, and then when I challenged them, I think they felt bad, and what they came back with was I was only joking, and I was like, to this day, I bring it up all the time, not all the time, but I talk about it often when given situations where it fits, and I still don't get it. I still don't get why it's funny. I still don't get it because, again, not being preachy, but I think if we just slow the bus down, right? Slow the bus down. I often ask my soldiers and cadets and friends of mine, if you know why you don't often see advertisings on taxi cabs, right? But you see them on the city buses. One is going too fast and one is going relatively slow enough for you to at least read the ads. That would be the city bus. The taxi cabs are just, especially New York City taxi cabs, right? Spider monkeys in and out. You don't have time to see what the thing said. But on buses, it slows the bus down. So metaphorically, I like to use that. Slow the bus down. And if we do just enough, 4 to 6 seconds, right? Sometimes even faster, we can make a different decision, a better assumption. We can question our assumptions and slow down what is not our fault, was passed on by our ancestors, but we can now control with the technology that we have, the things that can warn us ahead of time. But slow the bus down, and not be so quick to judge. But yeah, what if they were getting ready to go to work and not beg? Um, I think we're supposed to be, yeah, at intermission for 2 minutes. I am good on my beverage, which is coffee. If you need the 2 minutes, I will give you the 2 minutes as promised. And so here you, I'll just do some reading. All right. All right. Oh, by the way, welcome back. What am I reading? I plan on doing a deep dive on it actually. I am putting it together. That's what I'm working on, is how I want to take it on. But Niccolo's Smile, as in Niccolo Machiavelli. Um, I'll just call it the backstory, all right? Because I'm sure everybody knows everything they think they know about the Machiavellian attitude and Machiavelli. Scourge, not so fast. The backstory, but I think I'm going to put something together. Give me 1 second. Let me see if the landscapers are here, because then I have to bring the pup in. No, not them. Good, because it gets noisy. Even I don't think the mic would pick it up, but still, I wouldn't be able to hear very well, to be honest with you. But yes, plan on doing something about or with that. Not sure yet. That's what I'm working on, throwing it around. But yes, questioning our assumptions. I'm sure for those who will watch this after, and what is it, one other person, thank you for being here. Um, but if you watch this back, I would love to hear your comments on questioning our assumptions, situations you probably found yourself in where you had either similar or even more interesting examples of where you or someone you know or something you observed with going with what you first see. But I told you I wouldn't keep you to keep you, so let me share the last story with you, and then we'll wrap up. But uh, the backpack. So yeah, I was retired by then. I'm living in, I won't say the state yet because I'll say it at the end. um, if for no other selfish reason than impact, and not for my own personal selfish reason, but the selfish reason of the impact of the whole thing. Anyway, let's continue before he drifts ever so far. But I decided to go on a ruck run. So that means I am wearing uh, my rucksack, military rucksack, and I am not dressed militarily. I think I had on shorts, t-shirt, tennis shoes. I just had on the backpack for a little bit of added weight, which wasn't a very good idea in retrospect. But I had on the backpack. And I live in what I like to call um, a huge. So I live on a cul-de-sac, or lived past tense, um, on a street that ended in a cul-de-sac. But the general neighborhood itself, I used to call it one giant cul-de-sac. Probably confused the heck out of you just then, but just anyway. So and I lived there for a while, at least a year, if not better than 6 months. And I've worked out before, or had worked out before, in the neighborhood. So this day I decided to go on um, a run walk backpack workout, and I had headphones in. And shamefully, I listened to my music loud, which I'm sure I'm not alone, but it's not healthy. Okay, it's not. It's not sustainable. But I listen to my music fairly loud, especially when you're feeling it, right? And this day I was feeling it. It was nice and warm. I was properly hydrated, hint, hint. Ah, man. And so I'm working out and I go around the cul-de-sac, the horseshoe of a neighborhood, and I'm on my way back. And I get to my driveway and I drop my pack and I'm stretching. And while I'm stretching, I noticed the sheriff's car drive down the street, down to the cul-de-sac, and turned around and came back and is coming back up the street. Is it 4th of July? Memorial Day? Maybe. It might have been Memorial Day because I had the US flag out, I think, or my fallen, my wounded warrior flag. Anyway, they come back up the street and they stop by my mailbox. And by then I'd taken out my earbuds. And that would have been the passenger, puts his window down and they both look to where they can see me. And the one, I think it was the driver actually asked, even though the passenger was closer to me. And he said, were you just running? And I said, yeah, why? And he said, the poor guy, this one I laugh at every time I tell that part because of how badly I felt for them. This is what he said. He said they got a call that there was someone running in the neighborhood that looked hot. And this wasn't hot as in sexy hot. This is hot as in dehydrated hot. And I had just told you that I was fully hydrated because that's one thing I'm very keen on doing, okay? I won't say never, but it's very unlikely doing high intensity anything that I'm going to suffer from dehydration. It's just not one of the things I do. So I was properly hydrated, but this person had called and said I looked hot and needed some help. Folks, if it was hydration, being the good Samaritan that you alleged you are by calling the sheriff, wouldn't you have come out and offered me some lemonade? I mean, that's what I would have done, or at least the hose over the fence, safety and all. If you were just like, this might be a little shady, but at least I can hose him down, give him some water. No, you call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. Here is why the sheriff really got called. Black man running in a predominantly white neighborhood, it was. And oh, by the way, the state, Missouri, when during Ferguson. So I chuckle a lot, and me and my wife did too until she actually said, you know what? This could have turned out so wrong. Earbuds in my ears, loud music. If they'd showed up earlier than me getting back to my driveway and dropped the pack and was on a property exposed, not hiding, stretching, and they'd shown up and had made commands and I didn't hear them, and because I'm wearing this backpack and running in a neighborhood, you see how it could have turned out? So can laugh about it now, but question our assumptions, because I'm sure you say, Warren, you can't use sure. Give me another rationale. Give me another reason for what I just told you to play out. Another way to make that outcome any more rational than the two outcomes that it could have been. The one I just said gladly it wasn't, and then the other one that it funnily or comically, but also sadly, turned out to be. We could play the what if games. I don't like to, but for conversation's sake, what if? What if they'd shown up just a little earlier and made commands and I didn't respond because I didn't hear them? Based upon someone's first assumptions. Black man, backpack, Middle of the day, oh, by the way, or around about that time of the day, um, and sweaty, running. And here's the thing, I'll give the person an alibi. The backpack was a military backpack. There are a lot of military retirees living in the neighborhood that also have things they've probably accumulated over the years. My backpack was from my 20 years. It wasn't from service that I was still doing, right? So even I tried to ration it away or rationalize it away, but I still can't, because I go back to, if your argument, or unless the cops made it up and the person really said what I thought was said, and then the cops realizing what really played out just made it up. And here's the thing, they were white cops too. They thanked me for my service because I think it was Memorial Day. And they thanked me for my service and I thanked them for theirs. And then we kind of laughed and they drove away because, but the point is, they could have kept going to and not played it out after they realized what was going on. But being cops, they made sure by asking and probably checking other things out. I think by then too, I had the garage door up. So just things were normal. And I think he asked if I was military from the flag or from the backpack. But it could have gone so wrong just based on first assumptions. It could have gone so wrong. But I'm here gladly because it didn't. But so yeah, I kind of wanted to share that it's easy. It's easy to question, or I should say to jump to the conclusions we do from um, first impressions. And that's another thing, people say, first impressions are lasting impressions. That's part of why that is too, because again, we're looking for something to just cling on to say, this is what I'm using to now. um, Judge is such a harsh word, but pretty much to judge you from here on out. And it's why the reverse is also true, that you should probably give people the better side of you first, because of the fact they're going to cling on to the negative if that's what they see. There's so many nuances, shades of gray, in the kaleidoscope of colors, I like to call what we called our world. But that is all I wanted to share with you. Not going to keep you, but I'm going to continue doing some reading for this thought that I have mind looping in my head. And I'm going to play some tunes. If you want to stick around, you can. But thanks for stopping by and giving me a listening ear. And just do that, right? You have 4 to 6 seconds after the oh shit factor, whatever that is, the kids pissing you off, the coworker pissing you off, um, the person in traffic, whatever it is, you have, especially that last one. I did another, um, it was my last live actually, about an example where someone here again in this state didn't go home because of road rage, where someone just didn't take the 4 to 6 seconds to not respond. And yeah, so don't not go home to your families because of your um, passed on desire to be irrational. It's not so much that it's your fault, okay? But we have time to not be after we get more evidence and more resources. And 4 to 6 seconds, if not longer, gives us that. All right. So think about that the next time you feel like just losing it all, because then it just compounds and gets to be, instead of a half a dumpster fire you had control of with just your fire extinguisher, now you have several dumpster fires and have to call the fire department. You get it, right? Just slow the bus down. Slow the bus down. All right. And until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk again soon. I'll see you. Mm, mm, mm. Is it?